Hello, I'm Ian Marshman and I'm one of the County Council's archaeologists that deals with planning advice when sites are going to be affected by new developments. And in this short film we're going to have a look at what one of these sites can tell us about the history of Spalding. You might not think that a site of a new pub on a road called New Road would be the kind of place that you go looking for archaeology, but things aren't always that simple. Today, Spalding is a busy market town in the Lincolnshire fens, but it grew up around the River Welland and its medieval priory church. So when J.D. Wetherspoons applied for planning permission to build a new pub close to the medieval centre, we had to think about what the archaeological impacts might be. This map of Spalding from 1732 shows what's now New Road had a watercourse running through the centre of it that was called the West Lode. You can also see a building marked the Ivy Wall fronting onto the West Lode. So we asked the developer to hire some archaeologists to do some trial excavation to see what, if anything, survived beneath the shopping arcade that was going to be demolished. A team from APS Archaeology based in Heckington near Sleaford quickly uncovered medieval features and traces of buildings. So to be able to get their planning permission, South Holland District Council required J.D. Wetherspoon to do an archaeological excavation before the new buildings could be built. Experts from APS Archaeology worked for over 3 months over the winter to excavate the site. They found a medieval stone undercroft or sort of basement area which dated probably from the 12th or 13th century and would have come from a medieval stone house. Wetherspoons decided to preserve the remains in situ beneath the new pub, and visitors today can still see them preserved beneath a glass floor. The archaeologists found that the West Lode, which had been thought to be a drainage channel, was actually a natural river, and they found evidence that it flooded the site on numerous occasions throughout history. And to combat that, people had raised banks to try and hem it in and try and protect the site and raise the ground level so that it could be used throughout the medieval period and later. They found some evidence for the processing of crops and also for textile production, so it's possible that the house would have belonged to merchants or to farmers. The riverfront site would have been used to bring goods in and out, and interestingly APS found a door fronting onto the street where barrels and sacks could be loaded straight from the river into the building's undercroft. The team from APS also found a second medieval house that was slightly later next door. Instead of being built of stone, this was built a timber frame building that was built on stone pads. This wasn't a good idea on a site that was prone to flooding, and the archaeologists found that the building didn't last very long before it rotted and collapsed and it wasn't rebuilt. And it was interesting to see that the building had been a quite a high status one. It had had painted wall plaster and it was quite a fancy building. So it's a good example of, for us today to remember when we're building new buildings we've got to think about flooding, particularly in a landscape like the fen. The stone house, on the other hand, was extended several times during the medieval, Tudor and post-medieval periods using brick and stone. And this contrasts with the general view that Spalding declined after its priory closed with Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. In the post-medieval period, the building seems to have taken on a new lease of life, with industry going on behind the building to the rear. The archaeologists also found a wealth of cups, mugs and tankards dating from the 16, 17 and 1800s, and their pottery specimens suggested that it might actually have been used as a pub or an inn during this period. So it's very fitting that many of these objects are now on display as a feature wall within the new pub. The archaeologists also found many pieces of clay pipe, some of which were stamped IB, which is thought to be Isaac Bilby, who was a clay pipe maker that we know existed and was working in the early 1700s here in Spalding. Other finds had come much further, with imported pottery that had come from across the North Sea in Germany and the Netherlands, that reflect the town's trade links with that part of the world in this period. The medieval stone house probably survived into the early 20th century when a fire was recorded that destroyed many of the buildings in this part of the town. So, what about New Road? Well, in 1824 a new pumping station was built at Pode Hole in the fens west of Spalding to help drain the fens. This process meant that the West Lode dried up and the people in Spalding decided to cover it over and make a new road. So we ended up with New Road that we have today, but also West Lode Street, which preserves the name of the river that's gone from the town. Wetherspoons decided to call their pub the Ivy Wall, after the name shown on a building in this area on that 1700s map. And it might have been the name of that stone building during that period. Not only does Spalding have a new pub, but thanks to the archaeologists, we now know a lot more about the town's history. This is a great example of the kind of work we do in the Historic Places team, working with district councils and local businesses to preserve the county's heritage.